Hey y'all, today we're gonna make some Thai curry noodle soup and talk about the Patty Hearst case. The Patty Hearst case is kind of interesting and maybe a little more fun to talk about than some of the other cases. So we'll get started here with the ingredients first. I have shrimp, which I've cleaned and deveined, deshelled, all that. I have about a little more than a third cup of pineapple chunks. And then we have rice noodles. And there was a picture at the beginning with what's on my cutting board, but I'll kind of go through it. I've got shallots. I've got a little bit of red and yellow bell pepper, some cilantro, some green onion, some bean sprouts, some lime, some garlic, some ginger, some carrots, and some chili pepper. So I also have seasonings here. So I'll have a picture pop up and it'll kind of go through a written list, but just real quick, I've got a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin, and then an 1/8 teaspoon cayenne, 2 cloves ground up, which I have a pestle and mortar. I like to grind most of these down from fresh, so a lot of these are fresh. A little bit of cinnamon, about a little less than an 1/8 teaspoon. Same with the ground cardamom and nutmeg, because you don't want too much. There's going to be sweetness already from the pineapple and the coconut milk. So you're going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of paprika and then a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric. Alright, so the first thing we're going to get started, we're going to boil some water and put the noodles in there, and then we're going to get some oil, just some peanut oil, and I'm going to use a little bit of my chili oil, but you don't have to. Get that heated up in a larger bowl where we're going to be cooking everything else. Alright, so while our oil's heating up and our water's starting to boil, we'll introduce the case. So Patty Hearst was a 19-year-old in San Francisco, California. She was an heiress to a very large newspaper fortune, which we don't have a ton of anymore. But at the time, her family was kind of relative to Bill Gates' family. So they were really, really wealthy and influential, well known. So, but she was kind of just, a 19-year-old girl in college. She was living with her fiance, Stephen Weed. But her father's name was Randolph Hearst. Her mother was Catherine Hearst, and of course her grandfather, who was the head of this whole fortune, was William Randolph Hearst. So, like I said, she was living with her fiance at the time of what happens next, which is her kidnapping. And she was kidnapped by members of a group called the SLA, which is the Symbionese Liberation Army, which by army they were really more of 10 people, and only a handful of those 10 people really had a hand in Patty's abduction. But alright, before I get into the kidnapping, our oil's getting hot, so we're going to start with the garlic. Put the garlic in the pot, let that start heating up. Turn my heat down a little bit. And we're going to add the shallots and the bell peppers. Let those get fragrant. So give those a second to cook on their own. So on the night of February 4th, 1974, Patty and her fiance were hanging out at home. She was studying. They were having kind of an average night, and there was a knock on the door. Now, Patty kind of told her fiance not to open the door because she felt like someone had been watching her. Now, Patty, and I'm going to go ahead and add my ginger, my carrots, basically everything else. I'm going to toss it all in the pot and let it kind of cook a little bit, but not too much. And we're actually going to take it off the heat here after a couple seconds. But you're just going to go ahead and toss all that in and let it start kind of cooking. So, and then we'll go ahead and toss the shrimp in too, because you want them to cook, especially if you're like me and had them from frozen. So, February 4th, 1974. She's hanging out at home with her fiance. Knock comes at the door. She tells him, don't answer it, but he answers it anyway because men don't listen. Well, at the door was SLA member Angela Atwood. Behind Angela was a few other members of the SLA, including Bill and Emily Harris, and William Wolf, and Don DeFries. So, they barge into the house, they overpower Stephen, and then they beat him up, they tie him up, and they grab Patty. Now, Patty fights like hell. Stephen, I mean, traumatic event, so I'm not going to judge it too hard, but Stephen pretty much, does this little bit of fighting, and then, from what I heard, he runs out the back door, so he kind of leaves Patty to herself. So, and kind of keep that in mind, too, because I feel like that plays a part. But anyway, so they kidnap her, and Patty fights like absolute hell. She almost escapes multiple times. And honestly, this is another one of those infuriating cases, which if you're a true crime junkie like I am, you hear about these cases where the police will literally pull over a car with a kidnapping victim in the back seat. And it's like, oh my gosh, how? Like, how? Especially, like, there are a couple different serial killer stories where it could have been stopped after, like, the first or second one because the policeman pulled them over. And they just didn't do anything. So they actually pull over the car with Patty in it, and she, is trying to get loose. She's got a gag in. They've gagged her and they've tied her up. She doesn't get loose in time. The police officer was really just telling, I think it was Bill Harris, to turn on his lights. So they take her to the SLA safe house, and I'm putting my rice noodles in the water. You can toss the pineapple in now, while it's in a little bit of heat. You're gonna cook the pineapple a little bit. That's pretty good. But if you prefer the fresh, really juiciness of the pineapple, then you can wait till later to add it in. I'm gonna go ahead and toss it in because I just want it cooked a little on the edges. So. Alright, so they take Patty back to the safe house, and they still have her blindfolded, still have her gagged and tied up, and they put her in a closet, and they basically just keep her there. So they make their first demand, and they want 2 of their other members out of prison. Now, these members are in prison for shooting Marcus Foster and killing Marcus Foster. So Marcus Foster was Oakland's first black superintendent. So they believed that Foster was trying to put more police presence in schools, but he was actually doing the opposite. So they killed him thinking they were furthering their own like left-leaning cause, but they were dumb and he was not doing that, so they killed him for no reason. So these people, I mean, that should just give you an idea. These people are like dumb criminals disguised as activists. So their first demand is that the Hearst family gives $70 worth of food to every needy family in California. Now, when they added all that up, it cost about like $400 million or something insane. I don't know how many people know how like trusts work and things like that, but obviously the Hearst family, although they are really, really wealthy, they're not just walking around with that kind of liquid cash. It's all in a trust somewhere, and it actually has to go through, you know, when your family wealth is tied up in a company like that, they actually have to go through like, you know, boards of people to get access to millions of dollars like that. So they say instead, like they give a counter offer that, one, you're not getting your guys out of prison. They're not coming out. They're staying there. Forget about it. But the Hearst family says, we'll do $2 million worth of food. We'll set up, you know, places in different areas where people can come and claim these food items. And then once you release Patty, we'll do another $6 million. Well, it didn't really go great anyway, because there was a literal riot over the food in one area, and then, you know, they did have a few of these food dispensing charity things that went well, but yeah, I mean, overall, it didn't reach what the demand was from the SLA, and also there was a riot, so, you know, not ideal. It's not the best it could have gone, but they did, I mean, give out a lot of good free food, so they did something good. However, this wasn't good enough for the SLA, obviously. So meanwhile, Patty's being held for about 57 days total before we get to the next kind of phase of this. And in those days, she's being, you know, beaten, berated, sexually assaulted. Basically, anytime she says anything that disagrees with them, she is abused. So she's learning quickly, one, not to disagree with them. Also, they're kind of brainwashing her to believe that if they're all found, that Patty will be killed too. And I mean, there's obviously a lot of conditioning going on. She's stuck in these people's homes, blindfolded, and they keep her blindfolded. She can't see, so she can't, you know, really feel anything. She's got her hands tied for 57 days. So, and she's being abused, assaulted, just told all these crazy things. And again, remember, her fiance ran out the back door, so they're telling her, like, nobody cares about you, you know, they would kill you, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying that it's her fiance's fault, but, like, it would be pretty easy to convince me that, like, oh, he doesn't care about you, he ran out the back door. I mean, yeah, it's a smaller leap than the rest of the family, but, you know, I get how easy that might have been. So they're telling her all sorts of things, and she's kind of like at this point where she will tell them anything to survive. She's afraid that she's gonna be killed if she pisses them off, because they're treating her terribly anytime she says anything that upsets them. So she's having to make these like tapes where she says that she's decided to join them and that she's willingly participating, that she's, you know, crossed over to their side and all of this. And that's kind of where the next part of this comes in. So the SLA is not satisfied with anything that the Hearsts have done, and the Hearsts have kind of said, listen, we've done all we can. We literally can't do anymore, and we're not going to do anymore. So, and this also doesn't help Patty sitting there being told that like her family is not going to do anything else to save her. Now, I'll pause here. Our noodles are done. So we're going to pull our pot back over onto the heat. And we're going to drain our noodles. So we'll turn our heat back on the pot. We have it on low. We're going to add coconut milk. And just go ahead and throw that whole can in there. Whole can of coconut milk. And then we're going to do so I've got like a little, it's probably about a teaspoon. And I'm going to do at least 2 to start off with, but the rest of this we're going to do kind of to taste other than our seasoning. Alright, and we're going to do, so that was our seasonings. We're going to do a few drops of fish sauce. I'm going to start with a little bit of pepper, but again, you can do that to taste, and then some lime juice. So, now it's, I believe, Willie Wolf who comes into the closet where poor Patty has been staying for the past month and a half. And he kind of lets her know, hey, I'm not really gaining anything from having you as a prisoner anymore, but I'm going to put a good word in, so hopefully they don't kill you. So like, cool, thanks. I'd appreciate it, you know, like, oh, that kind of sucks. Thanks though. Hope they don't. Well, he comes back and he says, alright, so I talked to everybody else, and they agreed not to kill you if you join us. Well, at this point, Patty has no idea whether or not her parents are ever going to do anything to save her. And she's literally being told it's this or you die. So Patty chooses that she wants to live, even if that means living as a radical criminal activist. So the first thing they have her do is change her name. So she becomes Tanya, and then they shave her head, and they have her do another communique to her family, letting them know that she's willingly switched over. So then they have her put on a long brown wig, so they're having her again like dress up as her old self, and then they go rob a bank, and they rob Hibernia Bank in San Francisco, and that actually was Patty's friend's dad's bank. So kind of, I don't know if, I actually couldn't figure out if that was on purpose, but so in the process of robbing this bank, 2 people did get shot, but they didn't die, but they did get shot. And Patty was supposed to not only be seen on cameras, which she was supposed to announce her name and let everyone know that who she was, and that she was there willingly and actively taking part in this burglary. So she does. I mean, she yells her name, tells everyone there who she is, and that at this point the FBI is no longer looking for a hostage, they're looking for Patty Hearst, the criminal. So after the 2 people are shot, they leave with about 10 grand. And Patty actually later in an interview says that what she says is, for me, suddenly it became plain there was no turning back. So for her, she knew, I had just taken part in this criminal act. They're not going to look for me, like I said, as a hostage anymore. I'm a criminal now. So she's feeling pretty all in. And she's living with them. Now they move around a few times because the leader, Don DeFreeze, he actually is pretty paranoid, thinking that the cops have caught on to them, but they really haven't. They have no idea where they are still. But they're moving around. So now we're letting our soup simmer for a little while. In fact, we might turn the heat up a little bit. A little while later, about a month later, on May, so that bank robbery was April 15th, so we're only about 2 months after her initial kidnapping. Like I said, about 57 days. So 2 months after her initial kidnapping, her birthday has passed, so that kind of sucks. She turned 20 as a hostage. But so then May 16th rolls around, and she is just with Bill and Emily Harris, and it's just them 3. And they've run out to go do some errands, and one of those errands was to pay a parking ticket. So they are, doing a couple different things, and one of the things they do, they stop at like a sporting goods store, and they are kind of roaming around, and Bill sees something he likes and he sticks it in his pocket and he walks out. Now the clerk noticed and goes chasing after him. Now this whole time Patty's actually still in the van. So when Bill and Emily are running out of the store being chased by the clerk tackles them. The other guy at the store is trying to tackle him. Well, Patty decides that how she's gonna help out is to just unleash holy hell on him. And that's what she did. She emptied an M1 and then fired 30 more rounds after that. And don't know how, but she didn't shoot. She didn't actually hit anybody. So, okay. But, she didn't hit anyone. But she was just shooting like crazy. And, so they all hop back in the van and speed off. But they know now, these people know what van we're in. So, what they do, they carjack like 5 cars. One of the cars they carjack, they actually kidnap the guy in it, and that guy had the time of his life. Apparently they just chit-chatted the whole time, and he had a baseball game to get to, and that's what he told them. So then they start talking about sports, and this kid, I think he was a teenager, so he even said, he's I just thought it was cool. I was being kidnapped. That's kind of cool. I don't know if that's how I feel, but okay. So, they're riding around with this kid. They let him go, and they carjack another car, and they head down to Disneyland. So they're in Disneyland in Anaheim, and they're there because the motels are cheap. So they're in a cheap motel. They turn on the TV and they realize that they've made one really bad mistake. The really bad mistake that they made is that they left that parking ticket in the van that they were in. Well, that parking ticket had their current SLA safe house address. So what they saw on TV in Anaheim was the FBI takeover of their safe house. Now, it was at the time, it was the largest police shootout in history. It was something like over 200 rounds fired between the two. And the SLA members were murdered. Well, not murdered. no, these are criminals. They're in a shootout with the police. This is not the same as like murder. So they're killed. And Patty is watching this on TV, and in a way, everything that they told her about the FBI killing her gets kind of solidified. So she goes on the run for about the next year, and she is on the run in Pennsylvania, New York, and finally is arrested in September. Now, we'll pause right here. Our soup is starting to look good. So, the term Stockholm Syndrome hadn't like really been widely known at this point. So again, this is in 1974. Stockholm, the event that caused Stockholm Syndrome to be like a term, the 7-day hostage situation, that was in August of 1973. So that was the year prior. So it really was kind of fresh still and was in Sweden. So it didn't really reach America yet. I mean, it takes a little while for terms like that to catch on. So when Patty Hearst was facing trial, I don't think anyone was really thinking like that. Now, they did have psychiatrists and other people at her trial speaking to her character and speaking to what she, what she went through would have done to her psyche. And in fact, there was a psychiatrist that made it pretty clear, like, that she basically was exposed to everything that it would take to, create a brainwashing situation. But she was still found guilty, and she was sentenced to 7 years. But she only served 2 years because, and this is kind of funny in a messed up-ish way, she was actually commuted by Jimmy Carter because of Jim Jones and the Jonestown Massacre. Because that situation made people realize that, wow, if this guy can convince like that many people to kill themselves at once, then yeah, one 19-year-old girl could probably be convinced by her captors that she needs to join them. Like, after Jonestown, everyone kind of understood this is possible and it's really dangerous. So her sentence was commuted. She only served 2 years, and since then she has been an author. She's been really charitable, done really great things. She's had children, been married, and I believe divorced since then, but lived a full, good life. And she's really just, in interviews since then, saying basically she doesn't like to talk about it. It was a lot to go through. She's kind of trying to move on and live her life. Now, people can feel different ways. There are still people that think that she's just a girl that got away with a life of crime because, she made it out of jail after 2 years. But honestly, that girl went through a lot, and we just spent a little while talking about false confessions, so we kind of understand how fragile the human psyche really is. So, Patty, girl, you're just a survivor, and I get that. Because at the end of the day, she did everything she could to survive. So that's the Patty Hearst story. It's kind of a doozy. It's a wild ride. I kind of condensed it. If you're more interested in more of that story, there is a good podcast, Hostage. They do a 3-part series on it, and then, there was another good one. I'll put it in the video notes if you're still interested and want to learn more, because there is a lot more to the story. It is super interesting. I tried to hit all the highlights, but of course there's more details to go into, so I'll put that information in the video, and let's check out what we made. All right, looks super good. Cannot wait to dig in.
So hopefully yours looks something like that. And hopefully you enjoy. See you next time.